The galaxy is old, older than memory, older than the crumbling bones of dead stars scattered like cosmic dust across the velvet black. For eons, it has been governed by the Concord of Ascended, a pantheon of ancient hyper-intelligent species who view themselves less as rulers and more as cosmic gardeners, tending the fragile blooms of lesser life, pruning the unruly and ensuring the grand design remains orderly. Their power is not merely technological. It is woven into the fabric of space-time itself, a symphony of controlled entropy and manipulated quantum fields. They are the architects of peace, the arbiters of stability, the self-appointed guardians against chaos, and for millennia, their garden has flourished under their meticulous, unyielding hand, until they found Sol, Earth, a pale blue dot orbiting an unremarkable yellow star in a quiet galactic backwater. Scanned, catalogued, and dismissed centuries ago as a Class 3 pre-industrial world, barely sentient, prone to violent tribalism, environmentally unstable. A footnote in the Concord's vast archives, a world destined for slow, natural evolution, or quiet extinction. They never looked twice. They should have. Because Sol wasn't just unstable. It was alive, not with gentle flora or docile fauna, but with a seething, relentless, hungry ecosystem honed by billions of years of brutal, unforgiving selection. Earth wasn't a garden, it was a crucible, and from that crucible emerged Homo sapiens, not as delicate flowers, but as apex predators forged in fire, ice, flood, and famine. They called themselves human. The Concord would come to know them by another name, Deathworlders. The first contact wasn't heralded by fanfare, but by silence. A Concord deep-range survey vessel, the Whisper of Serenity, drifted into the Sol system on a routine archival update, its crew three serene, multi-limbed Zenthari draped in iridescent biosilk. Their thoughts flowing in calm, harmonic waves scanned the third planet. Their sensors registered the expected primitive radio chatter, atmospheric pollution, signs of nascent spaceflight, a few derelict satellites, a single fragile space station clinging to orbit like a barnacle. Standard pre-industrial clutter. They prepared to log the data and move on, their minds already turning to the next system. Then the Whisper vanished. Not destroyed, not disabled, erased. One moment, its quantum signature pulsed steadily against the stellar background. The next it was gone, as if snuffed out by an unseen hand. No debris field, no energy spike, just absence. A chilling void where a ship should be. Panic, a concept the Zenthari had long transcended, flickered like a dying ember in their collective consciousness. Anomaly, catastrophic failure, unlikely. The Whisper was a marvel of Concord engineering, shielded against stellar flares, micrometeoroids, even localized space-time distortions. This was different. This felt deliberate. The Concord High Council convened in the crystalline heart of their capital world, Ithil Prime, light refracted through towering spires of living quartz, casting shifting patterns on the smooth obsidian floor. The air hummed with the low thrum of consents. High Arbiter Kalen, his form a pillar of shimmering, segmented light, projected calm authority, but his internal resonance betrayed a tremor of unease. Analysis. Kalen's voice resonated not as sound, but as a complex waveform directly into the minds of the assembled Ascended. Archivist Voring, a being of shifting liquid metal, whose thoughts were recorded in intricate fractal patterns, pulsed a response. No known natural phenomenon accounts for the Whisper's disappearance. Sensor logs from its final moments show interference. Not technological, biological, a cascade of noise. Overwhelming, chaotic biosignatures emanating from Sol through. It saturated our passive sensors, then consumed the ship's active systems, like static devouring a signal. Biological? Kalen's light dimmed slightly. From a pre-industrial world? Impossible. Their biosphere is catalogued. Harmless microbes, primitive vertebrates. Catalogued centuries ago. Arbiter, Vorin countered, his metallic form rippling with agitation. This noise, it is unlike anything in our databases. Aggressive, adaptive. It bypassed our quantum shielding as if it were gauze. It felt hungry. A murmur rippled through the chamber, a discordant note in the usual harmony. War Master Threx, a hulking entity of chitinous plates and crackling energy fields, stepped forward. His presence radiated controlled aggression, the necessary counterpoint to the Council's usual serenity. Precaution dictates intervention. This anomaly threatens the Concord's stability. We must quarantine Sol 3, sterilize the biosphere. Eliminate the source of this chaos. Kalen hesitated. Sterilization was a last resort, a violation of the Concord's foundational principle of non-interference with developing sentience. But the whisper, the sheer wrongness of its erasure, prepare the scourge of purity, he finally resonated. The words heavy with reluctant finality. But first, send an emissary. A final observation. If the threat is confirmed, we act. On Earth, the silence was broken, not by alien ships but by the relentless drumbeat of human existence. Rain lashed against the reinforced plexisteel dome of Luna Forward Base Alpha, perched on the desolate sea of tranquility. Inside, the air hummed with recycled oxygen and the low thrum of fusion reactors. Commander Aris Thorne stood before the main viewport, his reflection ghostly against the stark, airless landscape. He wasn't looking at the moon, he was looking past it, towards the distant blue-green marble hanging in the black. His face was a roadmap of hard choices and harder losses. Lines etched around eyes that had seen too much too young. A scar, pale and jagged, ran from temple to jawline, a souvenir from the Martian dust wars. He wore the simple gray fatigues of the United Earth Defense Force, UADF, no insignia beyond a single worn insignia pin, a stylized fist gripping a lightning bolt. Project Aegis. Still watching the cradle, Commander? The voice was dry, laced with weary cynicism. The Lara Vance leaned against the doorway, her lab coat stained with coolant fluid. The dark circles under sharp, intelligent eyes. She was the base's chief xenobiologist, and the reluctant architect of humanity's first, terrifying line of defense. Thorne didn't turn. They're out there, Alara. Watching, waiting. The whisper, it wasn't an accident. They know something's wrong with us. He finally turned, his gaze locking onto hers. They know we're not like the others. Alara pushed off the doorframe, walking to stand beside him. She didn't look at Earth either. She looked at the stars. Wrong? Or just different? We survived the Permian extinction. We walked out of ice ages. We tamed fire, split the atom, and now we're clawing our way into the stars. Our biology is our weapon, Aris. Our immune systems are fortresses. Our adaptability is terrifying. To a species that evolved in sterile harmony, she trailed off, a bitter smile touching her lips. We look like a plague. Project Aegis isn't a plague, Alara. It's a shield. Thorne's voice was low, intense. It's the only reason that survey ship vanished. Your bioengineered nanites, they didn't just disable it. They consumed it, turned its very structure into raw materials for more nanites. Like a swarm. Like a defense. Alara corrected sharply, her voice rising. Passive. Triggered only by non-terrestrial, non-human biosignatures above a certain complexity threshold. It's a perimeter alarm, Aris, not a weapon. Or, it wasn't supposed to be. She looked down at her hands, stained not just with coolant but with the invisible residue of her creation. But you're right. To them, it looks like an attack, like we're predators. A klaxon blared, harsh and urgent, shattering the tense quiet. Red emergency lights bathed the command center in a bloody glow. Thorne and Alara spun towards the main holotank, a massive vessel, sleek and obsidian black, shaped like a predatory stingray forged from nightmares, decelerated into lunar orbit. Its surface shimmered with impossible geometries, drinking the sunlight. Concord insignia, a spiral of interlocking rings, glowed with cold blue light on its prow. The scourge of purity, Thorne breathed, the name tasting like ash. They didn't send an emissary. They sent the executioner. On the bridge of the scourge, War Master Threx observed the primitive lunar base through magnified sensors. His multifaceted eyes processed the crude structures, inefficient power signatures, the frantic biosignatures of the humans scrambling below, prey, weak, disorganized. The source of the chaotic bio-noise that had consumed the whisper must be planetary. This outpost was irrelevant. A new target the primary population centers on Sol 3 Threx resonated. His command sharp, decisive. Initiate sterilization protocol Alpha. Purge the anomaly at its source. Leave no trace. Arbiter Kalen ordered observation first. War Master. Vormaz's liquid metal form rippled on the command dais, his fractal thoughts flashing with concern. This is excessive. Castellan hesitates. Threx countered, energy crackling around his chitinous limbs. Asceditation breeds chaos. The anomaly must be contained. Now, before it spreads. He gestured, a complex series of light pulses. Fire. Deep within the scourge, colossal energy capacitors whined, drawing power from the ship's zero-point core. At its prow, a lens of solidified spacetime began to glow with an incandescent, malevolent white light. It wasn't a laser. It was a focused beam of pure entropic decay, a weapon designed not to explode but to unmake, to accelerate the target's atoms into dust and heat in an instant. Aimed squarely at the heart of human civilization, North America. On Luna Base Alpha, alarm screamed. Thorne's face was granite. Alara, can Aegis reach it? Can it stop that? Alara's fingers flew over her console, her face pale. The beam, it's not physical matter. It's manipulating fundamental forces. Aegis is designed for molecular structures, organic or inorganic. This is physics itself as a weapon. I don't know if it can. She didn't finish. The scourge fired. A beam of pure, silent annihilation lanced out from the black ship. It crossed the void between Moon and Earth in less than a second. It struck the atmosphere over the Mississippi River basin, and nothing happened. No explosion, no fireball, just a sudden, localized absence. A perfect circle of utter darkness, miles wide, where the atmosphere, the land, the cities, the people simply ceased to exist. Replaced by vacuum and cold, dead rock. The beam held for 3 seconds. Then it winked out. Silence. Profound, terrifying silence, even over the comms. Then, from the scourge, War Master Threx resonated, his voice thick with disbelief and dawning horror. Impossible. The beam, it was absorbed, not deflected, absorbed. On Luna, Thorne stared at the holotank, showing the horrifying scar on Earth's surface. But his eyes weren't on the devastation. They were on the data stream scrolling beside it. Alara's console was flashing frantic, impossible readings. Aegis. Alara whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of terror and awe. It didn't just absorb the beam, Eris. It learned from it. It's replicating the entropic field signature. It's building something. Before Thorne could respond, the main viewport of Luna Base Alpha filled with light. Not the cold light of the Scourge's weapon. This was different. Warmer, brighter, angrier. It erupted from the scarred continent below, a colossal, spiraling vortex of raw, chaotic energy, woven from the stolen entropic decay and amplified 1,000-fold by the ravenous, adaptive nanites of Project Aegis. It wasn't aimed at the Scourge. It was aimed at the stars. Specifically at the distant, glittering heart of the Concord capital, Aethel Prime. The vortex pulsed once, a silent scream across light years. Then it vanished. On Aethel Prime, in the crystalline heart of the High Council chamber, the serene harmony shattered. The living quartz spires screamed, a sound of rending stone and shattering light. The obsidian floor cracked. High Arbiter Kalen's pillar of light flickered violently, his resonance collapsing into raw, unfiltered terror. For the first time in 10 million years, the Concord felt true existential fear. And on Luna, watching the vortex vanish, Commander Eris Thorne finally understood the true meaning of the title the Concord would soon give them. Deathworlders. The war had begun, not with a declaration, but with a whisper of annihilation, answered by a roar of unimaginable fire. The silence after the vortex vanished was heavier than neutron star matter. On Luna Base Alpha, the klaxons had died. replaced by a suffocating quiet broken only by the ragged breathing of the command staff and the frantic, terrified chatter over encrypted comms channels. Earth Scar. A perfect, airless circle of dead rock where Chicago, St. Louis, and 100 smaller towns had been glowed faintly with residual heat on the holotank. A monstrous wound on the planet's face. Commander Ares Thorne stood frozen, his knuckles white where they gripped the edge of the console. The image of that vortex, born from humanity's desperate bioengineered shield and fueled by the Concord's own weapon of unmaking, replaying in his mind. It hadn't just struck back. It had reached across light years, to the heart of their enemy. "Alara," he rasped, his voice raw. "What? What did we just do?" Dr. Alara Vance stared at her console, her face ashen, her eyes wide with a horror that went beyond the immediate devastation. The data streams were chaotic, overwhelming. It used the entropic signature, she stammered, her fingers trembling as she tried to parse the impossible readings. Aegis didn't just absorb the energy, Ares. It reverse-engineered the fundamental principle. It created a conduit, a wormhole. No, something worse. It didn't just send energy. It sent us a piece of Earth's hunger. She looked up, her eyes meeting Thorne's filled with dawning, terrible understanding. We didn't just defend ourselves. We declared war on gods. On the Ethel Prime, chaos reigned. The crystalline spires of the High Council chamber lay in glittering ruins. The air, usually humming with harmonious consensus, crackled with dissonant fear and fragmented thoughts. High Arbiter Kalen's light form flickered erratically, struggling to maintain cohesion. The psychic backlash from the vortex's impact, a wave of pure alien chaos, had shattered the delicate mental equilibrium of the Ascended. War Master Threx stood amidst the wreckage, his chitinous plates scarred by flying crystal shards, energy fields sputtering. His usual controlled aggression was replaced by a primal, seething rage. "They struck the heart," he resonated, the waveform jagged, painful. "The source of our unity, the nexus of our harmony. They dared." Archivist Vorian, his liquid metal form pooled near a shattered data crystal, pulsed weakly. Not just struck, War Master. Infected. The chaos, it lingers, it spreads, like a virus. His fractal thoughts, usually precise and orderly, were fraying at the edges, contaminated by the raw, untamed energy that had washed over them. He could feel it, a gnawing, insatiable hunger in the very fabric of his being, a desire to consume, to break, to adapt. It was anathema. It was terrifying. Kalen finally stabilized his form, though it was dimmer, fractured. "The pre-industrial anomaly is a death world," he resonated, the words heavy with a dread that tasted like poison. "Not merely resilient, predatory. Its very biology is a weapon against order itself, Project Aegis. It is not a shield. It is a plague." He turned his fractured light towards Threx. "War Master. The Concord stands at the precipice. Hesitation is extinction. You have your mandate. Scour them from existence." Threx's energy fields flared, a corona of righteous fury. The scourge of purity was merely the first blade. "Now, we bring the entire arsenal. Every fleet. Every weapon. We will burn Sol 3 until its core is cold ash. We will salt the void around it so nothing can ever rise from that cursed cradle again." Back on Luna, the UEDF was scrambling. The loss of the American heartland was a catastrophic blow, but the immediate threat was orbital. The scourge of purity still hung in lunar orbit, a silent obsidian predator, and Thorne knew it wouldn't be alone for long. "Status on Aegis?" Thorne barked, striding towards the central command chair, his earlier shock hardening into grim resolve. Alara followed, her initial horror giving way to a fierce, protective intensity. "The core network is evolving, Aras. Rapidly. The entropic absorption triggered a cascade. It's integrating the principles, building countermeasures. But it's unstable, unpredictable. It's not just defending Earth anymore. It's reacting to the Concord's presence, like an immune system encountering a new pathogen." She pulled up a schematic. "Look, the nanite swarm is coalescing around Luna, forming structure on the holotank, A ghostly image overlaid the moon's surface. Tendrils of shimmering chaotic energy were weaving through the regolith, converging on Luna Base Alpha and the scattered UEDF installations. They weren't building ships. They were building weapons. Crude, terrifyingly powerful emplacements that pulsed with the same stolen entropic energy. "Can we control it?" Thorn asked, his eyes fixed on the forming guns. Alara shook her head, a lock of dark hair falling across her forehead. "Not directly. It's autonomous. Driven by the core directive, protect Terran biosphere. But it recognizes us as part of that biosphere. It's defending the base. For now." She met his gaze, her voice dropping. "But Eris, what if it decides the best way to protect Earth is to eliminate all potential threats, including us? If we get in its way?" Before Thorn could answer, the comms officer yelled, "Multiple contacts. Emerging from FTL. Bearing 000, Concord fleet." The holotank exploded with icons. Dozens, then hundreds. Sleek, deadly vessels of the Concord Navy, emerging from the quantum foam like sharks scenting blood. At their head, larger and more menacing than the Scourge, loomed the dreadnought Harmony's End, War Master Threx's flagship. Its obsidian hull seemed to drink the starlight, radiating cold, implacable purpose. "Shields! All hands to battle stations!" Thorn roared, slamming into his command chair. "Alara, get your people to the deepest bunkers. Now!" The Concord fleet didn't waste time with warnings. Energy beams, lances of pure entropy and focused gravity waves, lanced out, converging on Luna Base Alpha and the nascent Aegis emplacements. The moon's surface erupted in silent, devastating flashes of light as kinetic impactors and plasma bolts slammed into the regolith. But the Aegis defenses activated. Where the beams struck, the chaotic energy tendrils flared. They didn't just absorb, they deflected, scattered, and in some cases amplified the incoming fire, sending wild, uncontrolled bursts of destructive energy ricocheting back towards the Concord fleet. A frigate caught in the backlash of its own gravity wave imploded instantly. Another, struck by a reflected entropy beam, simply unraveled, its atoms dissolving into dust. On the bridge of the Harmony's End, War Master Threx watched the chaos unfold. His rage was a cold, focused thing now. Adaptive defenses, as expected from a Deathworld plague. But adaptation has limits. Order crushes chaos. Always. He gestured. Deploy the Symphony of Unmaking. Target the primary Aegis nexus, the human base. Deep within the dreadnought, a chamber pulsed with sickly green light. Thousands of crystalline resonators, each tuned to a specific frequency of Concord harmony, began to vibrate. The symphony wasn't a weapon of brute force. It was a weapon of dissonance. It projected a field designed to shatter the coherence of complex systems, biological, technological, even quantum. It would unravel the Aegis nanites, disrupt human neural patterns, and turn the moon's very structure to dust. It was the ultimate expression of the Concord's philosophy. Impose order by destroying the chaotic. The field washed over Luna Base Alpha. Alarms shrieked anew, but this time they were different, more organic. Human soldiers screamed, clutching their heads as their thoughts fragmented, memories dissolving into static. Consoles sparked and died as circuits overloaded. The Aegis energy tendrils flickered erratically, their chaotic patterns momentarily suppressed, forced into a jarring, painful dissonance. Alara Vance collapsed to her knees in the command center, blood trickling from her nose, her vision swimming. "It's attacking our minds," she gasped. "Our very coherence." Thorn fought the wave of nausea and disorientation, gripping his chair. He saw his crew faltering, the base defenses failing. The Concord fleet pressed closer, their weapons charging for the final blow. Despair, cold and heavy, began to seep in. Was this it? Crushed not by overwhelming force but by the very idea of order turned against them. Then, a new sound cut through the psychic static. Not a klaxon, not a scream. A deep resonant thrum, emanating from the moon itself, from the Aegis network. The nanites weren't being unraveled. They were learning. The Symphony of Unmaking was pure, structured chaos, designed to break coherence. But Earth's biosphere, humanity's own biology, was born in chaos, floods, fires, ice ages, pandemics, constant, brutal change. The Aegis network forged in that crucible didn't resist the dissonance. It absorbed it. It used it. The flickering energy tendrils didn't stabilize. They exploded in complexity. The chaotic patterns became infinitely more intricate, weaving the dissonant frequencies of the symphony into their own structure, amplifying them 1,000-fold. The field projected back towards the harmony's end wasn't just reflected, it was enhanced, twisted into a shrieking wave of pure, unadulterated biological and quantum noise. On the Dreadnought's bridge, War Master Threx felt it first, a searing pain in his chitinous mind. His carefully ordered thoughts fragmented, memories of ancient victories dissolved into static. The harmonious resonance of his crew became a cacophony of shrieking fear. The crystalline resonators of the symphony chamber shattered, overloaded by the feedback. The harmony's end lurched violently. Lights flickered and died. Alarms blared in discordant, panicked tones. Threx roared in psychic agony, his energy field sputtering out. Impossible! How can chaos defeat order? In the relative quiet of Luna Base Alpha's command center, the immediate dissonance had passed, leaving a ringing silence and throbbing headaches. Thorn helped Ilara to her feet. She was pale, shaken, but her eyes burned with a fierce, almost feral light. "It's not defeating order, Ares," she whispered, staring at the holotank showing the crippled Concord flagship. "It's consuming it, turning their weapon into fuel. Like a forest fire consuming the dry brush to clear the way for new growth." She looked at him, a terrifying realization dawning. "Aegis, it's not just defending Earth anymore, it's evolving. It's becoming something else. Something that sees the Concord not just as a threat but as..." Thorn felt a chill that had nothing to do with the base's failing environmental systems. The victory felt hollow, tainted. They'd survived, but at what cost? What had they unleashed? His comms officer interrupted, voice tight with disbelief. "Commander, we're getting signals. From Earth. From the sky." Thorn and Ilara rushed to the main display. The feed showed the airless crater where North America had been, but it wasn't empty. Rising from the dead rock, woven from the same chaotic energy as the Aegis tendrils, was a structure, vast, impossibly complex, organic and geometric at once. It pulsed with a deep, rhythmic light, like a colossal, slumbering heart, and from it a signal pulsed out, not in any human language but in a cascade of bioelectrical impulses and quantum fluctuations. Alara's console lit up, translating fragments. Her face went utterly white. It's not just a structure, Ares," she breathed, her voice trembling with awe and terror. "It's a beacon, and it's broadcasting instructions." She turned to him, her eyes wide with the devastating revelation. "Instructions for building more of itself, across the galaxy, using the Concord's own technology. Their ships, their worlds, their bodies." The Aegis wasn't just a defense, it was a seed, and humanity, unwittingly, had just scattered it across the stars. The beacon pulsed, a silent, relentless rhythm emanating from the scarred heart of Earth, a siren song woven from stolen entropic decay and the ravenous hunger of a deathworld. Its signal wasn't just data, it was a blueprint, a viral command encoded in the very fabric of reality, carried on the quantum foam. It whispered to the Aegis nanites already clinging to the crippled Concord ships in lunar orbit, to the fragments of the Whisper of Serenity still drifting in the void, to the very dust motes kicked up by the Concord's boots on Ethel Prime's shattered streets. Consume. Adapt. Build. On Luna Base Alpha, the victory over the Harmony's end felt like ashes in Commander Aris Thorn's mouth. The immediate threat was repelled, the Concord fleet in disarray, but the true horror was unfolding on the holotank. The beacon's signal was spreading, faster than light, riding the quantum entanglement threads the Concord themselves used for communication. Tiny, nascent Aegis structures, glowing, chaotic nodes were appearing on sensor scans near damaged Concord vessels. On asteroids, even flickering at the edge of the Solar system. The plague was airborne. Galactic Dr. L.R. Vance stood beside him, her face etched with a profound, weary sorrow. "We didn't just fight back, Aegis," she said, her voice barely a whisper over the hum of damaged systems. "We weaponized evolution. We gave the galaxy a predator it never knew it needed, or deserved." She looked at the pulsing beacon on Earth, and it's learning, faster than we can comprehend. Thorn clenched his jaw, the weight of command crushing him. "Can we stop it? Shut it down?" Alara shook her head slowly. "The core directive is absolute. Protect Terran biosphere. The beacon interprets the entire galaxy as a potential threat vector now. The Concord attacked us. Their technology, their very presence, is the pathogen. The only way to protect is to neutralize the source. Everywhere." She met his eyes, her gaze filled with a terrible clarity. "We created a god, Aris, and it's hungry." On Aethel Prime, the situation was apocalyptic. The initial psychic backlash from the vortex had been bad. The spreading Aegis signal was worse. The chaotic infection Vorn had sensed wasn't just lingering, it was spreading. Concord citizens, beings of pure harmony, were fracturing. Their thoughts, once clear and resonant, became jagged, fearful, individual. Some succumbed to madness, lashing out with uncontrolled energy. Others changed. Their forms became less stable, more adapted. They began to consume the crystalline structures of their own cities, not out of malice, but out of a terrifying instinctive drive to build something new, something that resonated with the chaotic signal. The garden was being overrun by weeds that ate the gardeners. High Arbiter Kalen stood on a balcony overlooking the ruined capital, his light form dim and flickering erratically. The harmonious song of his people was gone, replaced by a discordant symphony of screams, psychic static, and the unsettling sound of crystalline structures being digested. War Master Threx approached, his chitinous plates scarred, his energy fields weak. The dissonance had taken its toll. "The Deathworlders?" Threx resonated, his voice stripped of its former arrogance, filled only with hollow dread. "They didn't just fight, they infected us with their chaos." Kalen's light pulsed weakly. "Not chaos, War Master. Life. Unfiltered. Uncontrolled. The very thing we sought to prune, to contain. It has consumed us from within." He looked out at the dying city. "Our order was a cage, and they hold the key." A terrible realization dawned in his fractured mind. "We declared them weak. We saw their struggle, their violence, their constant battle for survival, and we mistook it for fragility. We were blind. Their strength isn't in their weapons, though those are terrible enough. It's in their resilience, in their ability to thrive in the storm we sought to eliminate. We are the fragile ones. Our harmony, it was brittle." Threx stared at him, the last vestiges of his warrior's certainty crumbling. "What do we do?" Kalen's light dimmed further, almost to nothing. "We cannot win a war against life itself, War Master, not by force, not by order." He turned his fading light towards Threx. "There is only one path left. Not victory, but sacrifice." Back in Soli's system, the Concord fleet, though battered, was regrouping. Reinforcements poured in from across the galaxy, drawn by the distress calls and the terrifying spread of the Aegis signal. The Harmony's end, jury-rigged and limping, became the nucleus of a desperate last stand. War Master Threx, his mind scarred but his purpose reforged in the fires of despair, broadcast a final unified command across all frequencies, a command that bypassed the fractured harmony, speaking directly to the primal survival instinct now shared by all Ascended. "Concord forces, this is War Master Threx. The Deathworld plague spreads. It consumes order. It consumes us. We cannot contain it. We cannot defeat it. But we can starve it." The plan was horrifyingly simple, brutal, final. The Concord fleet, every ship, every drone, every soldier, would gather at a single point in deep space, far from any habitable world. They would activate their zero-point cores, not to power weapons but to create a localized artificial singularity, a point of infinite density that would consume everything within a vast radius, including space-time itself. A self-inflicted wound so deep it would sever the quantum threads carrying the Aegis signal, creating a dead zone where the plague could not propagate. They would sacrifice themselves, their entire civilization, to quarantine the Deathworld's contagion. It was the ultimate act of order, imposing finality on chaos even at the cost of their own existence. On Luna Base Alpha, Thorn and Ilara watched the sensor feeds with growing horror as the Concord fleet, hundreds of ships, began converging on a point near the Oort cloud. The energy signatures building were off the charts. "They're going to implode themselves," Ilara whispered, her scientific mind reeling at the scale of the sacrifice. "Create a black hole to cut the signal? It's suicide," Thorn said, his voice tight. "Madness." "Is it?" Ilara countered, her eyes fixed on the gathering fleet. "Or is it the only sane thing left? They see what we've unleashed, Aris. They see the beacon turning their own dead ships into more beacons. They're trying to contain it, to protect the rest of the galaxy from us." She looked at him, tears welling in her eyes. "We did this. Our fear, our desperation, our firepower." Thorn felt the weight of it all. The loss of Earth's heartland, the billions dead, the monstrous creation they'd birthed, the noble, doomed sacrifice of their enemies. He looked at the pulsing beacon on Earth, then at the gathering Concord fleet. A terrible choice crystallized in his mind, a choice that felt like tearing out his own heart. "Ilara," he said, his voice suddenly calm, resolute, "can we redirect the beacon? Not stop it, but aim it?" Ilara's eyes widened. "The core directive is absolute. Protect Terran biosphere. Redirecting it would require overriding the primary imperative. It would mean—" She trailed off, understanding dawning. "It would mean offering the beacon a different target. A target that isn't a threat to Earth." Thorn nodded, his gaze fixed on the holotank showing the Concord fleet's final formation. "They're gathering to die, to become a tomb for their own civilization. But what if they become something else? What if we offer the beacon a purpose? Not just consumption, but transformation." It was a gamble of cosmic proportions, trusting a ravenous, evolving god born of their own desperation, trusting it to understand a concept as alien to it as mercy. Or perhaps, not mercy, but efficiency. The Concord fleet, gathered together, was the ultimate concentrated source of non-Terran technology and biomass. The perfect raw material. If the beacon could be convinced that consuming this specific target would fulfill its directive more effectively than spreading randomly, it might focus, it might spare the rest of the galaxy. "Ilara," Thorn said, turning to her, his eyes burning with a desperate hope, "I need you to talk to it, to the beacon, not as its creator, as a fellow Terran. Appeal to its core purpose. Show it the fleet. Show it that this is the true source of the threat, that consuming this will protect Earth more than consuming everything else." Ilara took a deep, shuddering breath. It was insane. The beacon wasn't sentient, not in any human way. It was an emergent property of a billion nanites following a simple, brutal algorithm. But it was learning. And it recognized Terran biosignatures. Maybe, just maybe. She rushed to her console, bypassing safety protocols, jacking directly into the primary Aegis uplink. She poured her consciousness into the stream, not with commands but with intent. Images flooded the connection. The scarred Earth, the fragile blue marble, the Concord fleet, a swarm of obsidian locusts, the gathering point near the Oort cloud. The faces of the billions lost, the faces of the children in the bunkers below, the need for Earth to survive, and then the fleet again, not as scattered threats but as a single concentrated offering. Take this, it is the threat, consume it, protect the cradle. For a long, agonizing moment nothing happened. The beacon on Earth pulsed its steady, hungry rhythm. The Concord fleet continued its final preparations, the energy at the convergence point building towards critical mass. Then the beacon changed. Its pulse quickened. The deep rhythmic light flared, becoming almost blinding. The chaotic energy tendrils snaking across the dead continent retracted, coiling inward, focusing. The signal broadcasting across the galaxy shifted. The viral blueprint for random construction vanished. In its place came a single, overwhelming command, focused with laser precision on the coordinates of the Concord fleet's gathering point. Consume. Deep in the Oort cloud, Warmaster Threx stood on the bridge of the Harmony's end, watching the final energy readings climb. The singularity was moments from forming. He felt a strange peace. They would die, but they would die clean. They would take the Deathworld plague with them into the void. Then the sensors screamed. Not with the approach of human weapons, but with an impossible energy signature. A wave of pure, chaotic creation, born from the heart of the Deathworld itself, tearing across the light years with impossible speed. It wasn't aimed at destroying them, it was aimed at... Before Threx could react, the wave hit. It wasn't fire, it wasn't entropy, it was integration. The Aegis nanites, guided by the Beefid's focused command, didn't attack the Concord ships. They embraced them. They flowed over hulls of obsidian and crystal, not to dissolve but to weave. They consumed the zero-point cores not to unmake but to repurpose. The chaotic energy merged with the Concord's harmonious technology, creating something entirely new, something that was neither purely Deathworld nor purely Ascended, but a terrifying, beautiful fusion. The nascent singularity flickered and died, starved of its fuel as the Concord ships were transformed. The fleet didn't explode, it bloomed. Vast, organic geometric structures, glowing with the deep light of the beacon and the cool luminescence of Concord crystal, unfurled in the void. It pulsed with a new rhythm, a rhythm that was both chaotic and ordered, hungry and protective. The Aegis plague had found its purpose. It had consumed the source of the perceived threat, and in doing so had been changed. On Etheltal Prime, High Arbiter Kalen felt the shift. The discordant screams in his mind softened, replaced by a new complex harmony, one that contained the old order but also the vibrant, terrifying energy of the Deathworld. He looked out at his ruined city, and saw not just decay, but the first, fragile shoots of something new pushing through the crystalline rubble. Life. Adapted. Surviving. On Luna Base Alpha, silence returned. The holotank showed the transformed Concord fleet. A constellation of impossible living ships hanging in the Oort cloud, radiating a calm, watchful energy. The beacon on Earth pulsed once slowly, then fell dark. The viral signal across the galaxy ceased. The immediate threat was over. Alara slumped back from her console, exhausted, tears streaming down her face. It worked. It understood. Thorn stood before the viewport, looking not at the transformed fleet, but at the scarred Earth. The wound was still there, a permanent reminder of the cost, but around its edges, impossibly, tiny green shoots were already pushing through the dead rock. Life, as always, finding a way. He turned to Alara, his voice rough but steady. They called us weak. They saw our struggle and called it fragility. He looked out at the stars, where the new fleet hung like silent guardians. But our strength was never in avoiding the storm. It was in learning to dance in the fire, and sometimes, to become the fire. The war was over, not with a bang but with a terrifying, hopeful whisper. Humanity had answered the gods' declaration of weakness, not just with firepower beyond cosmic imagination, but with the one thing the gods could never comprehend, the relentless, adaptable, terrifyingly creative spirit of a species forged in the crucible of a Deathworld. They hadn't just survived, they had changed the galaxy. And somewhere, in the quiet hum of the transformed fleet, in the green shoots pushing through the scar, in the weary eyes of the survivors on Luna, the universe held its breath, waiting to see what the Deathworlders and their new strange children would do next. The fire had been answered. Now the dance began.